So crossing the Jordan.
Crossing the Jordan. Cross the Jordan.
Oh, cross the Jordan?
Just cross the Jordan.
Cross the Jordan.
Yep.
How'd that come to you?
So I was reading Joshua chapter 1. And first of all, I was thinking of keeping my ministry name as Kingdom Possession Ministries. And I was told by some great teachers here at RTBI that possession is a strong word to use. And I see exactly where they're coming from. And I just kept reading Joshua 1. I was meditating on it, and I was talking to one of my pastors, Pastor Luke, about it. And he was like, man, this is a really powerful chapter in the Bible, because it talks about God speaking to Joshua and telling him to cross the Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just go do it, because there's land over there that I have for you and I have for your people. And I'm like, man, this is awesome, because Pastor Jonathan talks about possessing the land. He talked about it the last 2 years. So I'm like, man, there's land out there that belongs to a believer. There's territory that belongs to believers. And so cross the Jordan. It's like, people talk about taking a leap of faith, but I don't see this as a leap of faith. This is a step into a divine inheritance that belongs to the believer. So my purpose, my mission, and part of my vision is for believers to receive the inheritance that God has ordained for them since the beginning. So like Moses and the Israelites, there was territory that belonged to them. That was their inheritance. That was their land. That was their possession. And it took them longer than they thought. They went their own route instead of going the way that God had told them to go. And it took them a long time to get there. And there's still land that they never got to. But then it came down to Joshua, and it was for him. It was his land. So maybe there's people out there that have grandparents or parents who had a call of God on their lives, and God wanted them to do a certain thing. Yeah. And at my ministry, Across the Jordan, I want everyone in this generation and that's alive today to grab hold of what belongs to them, the inheritance that belongs to them. And I want them to cross the Jordan and step into the inheritance that belongs to them as a believer.
Facts. It's like calling people to take up their mantle. Mm-hmm. And like step into a true divine calling that they may have never even known that they had.
Right.
That's crazy. Were you there Wednesday night when Pastor Kofi was preaching?
I wasn't. I was at Mighty Kids.
Oh my gosh, bro. Oh yeah, bro. He was on, I'm telling you, he was on something special. You should go back and listen to it.
Was it good?
I'm serious. It's not like you're already busy enough.
Was it about like stepping into?
It was about Jericho, which was the first city that the Israelites encountered when Joshua crossed them into the promised land. Yep. And he was talking about how like gates. It's funny because you're talking about the Israelites crossing into Jordan, and Pastor Kofi's message was talking about the the city of Jericho and the people who inhabited it. They built that over the course of 430 years while the Israelites were crossing. Wow. And it continued to grow in size and stature. The wall was so big it could hold 14 chariots across it, like widthwise. Wow. Like that's how big the wall was. And he was talking about how these people, no one could come in and no one could go out. And they thought that they were secure and they thought that they were locked in. But the truth is that the wall that surrounded them, while they thought it was for protection, it was actually keeping them like contained. And so Pastor Kofi spent this whole message talking about how these walls, even spiritual walls that we put up on our own lives, they contain. Wow. And God literally brought the Israelites through the Jordan, and in a moment, those walls came crashing down. Wow. And when the Israelites went in, they plundered everything. And the 430 years when they had nothing, the Lord made sure their shoes never wore out. But they literally got to a point to where they went from nothing to inheriting 430 years of wealth accumulation, 430 years of gold, of property, everything in a moment like that. And now they became like one of the most prosperous nations as soon as they crossed the Jordan.
Wow. That's amazing.
You got to go back and listen to it because it plays hand in hand with like this idea of like cross the Jordan. Yeah. Okay, now what happens? Yeah. But keep going because that's
yeah. I actually have some questions after you just said that. Like,
you keep talking. I'm gonna see if I can find the scripture that he was preaching on because dude, it was fire.
Yeah, because just hearing you say that, it's like, okay, there has to be steps that God tells you to take, and if God tells you to take steps, the first step was crossing the Jordan. Go cross the Jordan. He sent out some spies to check over the land, And even then, when Joshua went out there, in Joshua chapter 2, he ran into the prostitute. And even then, God protected him, even with the prostitute. So God will use anyone to make sure that you get to your mark. It's just people taking the step to cross the Jordan, attempting to do it. Mm-hmm. And I know the Lord spoke to me a few things to do. And I mean, I'll just air it out now. But
yeah, please.
The Lord spoke to me about a specific location to help start a revival in, and I decided to take a step. And the step is, obviously I go to church at Revival Today, but I have to go to the 8 a.m. service as a student. That's what we're mandated to do. And I decided, all right, after 8 a.m. service, I'm going to go to the location that I felt the Lord speak to me to go to. So I go to their services. They probably get done at like 1 o'clock. So I go to their services around 11, get done at 1. And even though they don't preach maybe the things that are truly the right thing to preach, I'm there because I know my purpose, you know? Like, I know that I have an assignment for that place. And I'm just spying, you know, like Joshua. I'm just spying out the land, checking it out, because I know there's an inheritance that belongs to the believer there. And at the end of the day, it's for kingdom building. We're in the last move of revival that's going to take place on this earth. And I want to be a part of it. I don't want to just be a guy on the bench that's watching everybody else. I want to be a part of it. I want to bring in a move of God for my generation so people can cross the Jordan. So
that's crazy. So check this out.
What chapter are we in?
So this is Joshua chapter 6. And even the first verse just speaks to, like, I don't know. We'll just roll with this. Joshua chapter 6, verse 1. Now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. Now remember, the Israelites had nothing. They were a large people group, but this is not like they were carrying, you know, they didn't have cavalry. They didn't have they had nothing. They were just a people traveling. Right. They had just crossed the Jordan. They were afraid of the Israelites. No one was allowed to go out or in. But the Lord said to Joshua, I have given you Jericho, its king and its strong warriors. You and your fighting men should march around the town. And then obviously you know how it goes from there. Seventh time they march around, the walls come crashing down. And it's like, what I love there is you know, what Pastor Kofi was saying, this idea of confinement and containment, and how people, spiritually speaking, like the walls of Jericho, people do this in their lives from when they're born, is they build these barriers around their own life. Wow. They have no idea what's being contained inside. And so our prayer was like, Lord, break every container, every barrier, and break every, there's another word that he used that I can't really think of off the top of my head. But like, even though they were the biggest, they were the wealthiest, they were the strongest, they had the most fortified city, it came down in a moment. And when it did, all that wealth was transferred to God's children. Wow.
That's all it takes, is for you to grab hold of what belongs to you and go. What would you say is the biggest, what was the biggest takeaway from that? Rather, not only just to go and face your Jericho or whatever, but what was your biggest takeaway when it comes to breaking that wall?
The prayer was, Lord, release me from the limitations I've created.
So is it more like yielding just to the Lord? Huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's recognizing that every and anything I can mentally think of is too small for what God sees. Because so many times, and dude, I've done this before, where it's like even like a new laptop. I was praying to the Lord, I need like $1,000 to buy a new laptop. And then, God, do you need $1,000 or do you need a new laptop? Wow. You know, because I set the price limit. I set my sight on like a specific one. And Kofi shared a very similar story to this when he was preaching on Wednesday night. And then literally when I changed my perspective and said, Lord, I need a laptop and I know you can provide. That took limitations off of what that means, how I get it, when all those types of things. Yeah. And now all of a sudden I got the Mac Mini that's coming free of charge, plus the 40-inch TV and all those types of things that came with it. And so it's like, to me, like every and anything I could think of is a barrier and limitation, because my mind is in the flesh. But to spiritually step into a Joshua mentality and say, and hear the Lord say, I've given you that land, which is our scriptural mandate across the world. Yeah. How do you have to, I mean, removing that mindset is to take off the limitations of what the end goal actually looks like. So dude, to say cross the Jordan is a beautiful picture of like, there's no limitations. Yeah. Cause you're crossing the threshold from natural to supernatural, from nothing to acquiring everything that the Lord's promised you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Even in Joshua, talking about crossing the Jordan, I mean, he parted the Jordan so they can walk right through it. I mean, he made it dry for them.
I always forget that he parted the sea. That he parted the Jordan, like, which is not a small river. It's not like they,
Yeah, like he literally made it dry for them to walk right through. So it's like, even you look at the Jordan, the river. It's flooded with water. Water's everywhere. How am I going to get through? Just go. Just go. You just got to go and cross the Jordan, and the Lord he paves the way for you.